Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I am super excited that you're here today and that you're listening to this really important episode, because today I want to talk with our next podcast guest about how to get unstuck, because I think sometimes we are in situations in our lives where we feel stuck and we don't really know how to get out of it or how we maybe got into it into the first place. So those are all things that I would like to talk with our next podcast guest about today, and it is Shira Miller. Hi, Shira. How are you today?
Hi, I'm excited to be here with you, Julia.
Yeah, me too. I always start my podcast, and my listeners know this really, really well. I always start my podcast with three very simple questions. And the questions are: number one, where are you located? Number two, what time is it in your time zone? And number three, how did you start your day this morning?
Oh, I love those questions. So I am located in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. It is currently 1:10 p.m. my time. And I started my day by taking a 4-mile walk. I actually woke up, listened to a meditative recording, and then took a walk. And it was a wonderful thing to do early in the morning before coming into the office.
Very nice. Do you do that often?
Yes, I exercise. I have a combination of, I listen to a meditative recording. If I have time, I'll journal a little bit in the morning. I always try to hit it at some point in the day. And then I exercise almost every day before I start working.
Wow, very nice. And what did you do after your walk and when you got to the office?
Well, since I've been here for the past few hours, I've been working on a lot of different projects and initiatives. I have a full-time corporate job in addition to being a certified executive coach and talking to people about my book right now. So actually, I'm talking to a conference right now about a speaking engagement. So wish me luck. I'd really like to speak there.
Yeah, great. Well, I will cross my fingers for you, and the listeners will now as well. Shira, tell us a little bit more about you. You already mentioned you are still working full-time for a corporate company. What do you do for them? And then also, how did you get into coaching? And yeah, all the things. We want to hear more about you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. So I'm a multi-hyphenate, meaning I'm one of those crazy people who just does a lot of things. I think you're like that as well. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So my day job, which I do love, I'm the chief communications officer at a $2 billion corporation in the food service supply chain business. Okay. So that's what I do. Corporately, I'm also a 2-time TEDx speaker. I became a certified coach. I am actually through Coaches Training Institute. So certified professional coactive coach. And I wrote a new book because I write a lot of articles about wellness and well-being at work and at home. And the book is called Free and Clear: How to Get Unstuck and Live the Life You Want.
Amazing. And tell us about your other books. So you said that is that the first book
that you
published?
This is the first book. It took a few years to give birth to it.
Nice. Amazing. Wow. And how do you decide that, you have this amazing corporate career? How do you decide that you want more and that, maybe you're still not fully, you still have too many hours in the day to invest in other things?
I never have too many hours in the day, but it's a matter of wanting to make a difference and live a life that's filled with purpose. So about 4 years ago, I made the commitment. I've had a successful career, but I realized something that was really exciting me and filling me up. I'm somebody who has gotten stuck and unstuck many times in my life. I actually jokingly, but on a serious level too, call getting unstuck my superpower. And I'm really passionate about helping others do it. So I conducted a lot of research. I interviewed over 100 people. And I created a step-by-step process, and it's my give back. This is if I can put a megaphone, and hold it up and help as many people as possible, that's why. So while my corporate job is great, I wanted to do something that would genuinely help as many people as possible and didn't just rely on me coaching people individually.
Yeah. And you still do your corporate job full time?
I do.
Wow. What I always think is so powerful when I talk to people like you is that I think we really do actually have a lot of hours in the day to get a lot of things done. It's really just a question of how do we choose to do it? What do we prioritize for ourselves? I remember actually I think my very first podcast interview guest, which is 3.5 years ago, because I've had this podcast for 3.5 years. This is the 180th or 181st episode today. So I've done a lot of podcast interviews, and the very first person that I interviewed for the podcast was a really good friend of mine. His name is Derek. If people want to check out that episode, I think it's episode number 2 or 3 on the podcast. And he was a full-time employee at Google, and he also was an Ironman. So he would train like 2 times a day. He also had his own business on the side. He had a family and a child. And, I was always saying to him, I really love, you're such a role model for me, but I think also for so many other people. And I see that with you as well, because so often we use this excuse of, I don't have time for this, as a reason to not get into things, and as a reason to not explore our passions or the things that bring us joy, because maybe the corporate job or the job that we're currently in makes us so tired, maybe mentally, that we feel like we don't have that energy. But I think the energy is there. I think it's such a mindset, and I'm curious to hear, were you always like that? Have you always had that energy, or was that also a mind shift for you from, I just, maybe being in that corporate world and maybe, feeling exhausted from not maybe filling your time with things that actually brought you joy and passion?
I find I have so much. So I've always had a lot of energy, but I haven't taken the best care of myself. About 30 years ago, I consciously started making changes. I lost 50 pounds. I started working out in the morning. I chose to become a morning person because I read when you do things in the morning, you're going to be more effective. And I figured nothing would mess with exercise if I got it done before work. I find that if I don't eat particularly healthy, or if I really skimp on sleep, I don't have much in the gas tank. I have to make self-care a priority. So that is what fuels me. And if I try to ignore it or diminish it, it comes right back and slaps me back down. So
yeah. And it's two so simple things, right? I love that you're saying that as well. Amazing. Okay, so I do want to obviously talk with you today about getting unstuck. But I know that you have also, through that research that you have conducted for your book, identified 7 ways of how we are getting stuck in the first place. So tell us a little bit more about that. Can you talk us through those seven reasons?
I would be delighted to. And so this came from my original research with over 100 people to try to find patterns and understand what was holding people back. And the first is something.
Sorry, can I interrupt you for a second there?
Sure.
I'm curious to hear what kind of people you interviewed, and also if they were did you interview them specifically about what gets them stuck in career or what gets them stuck in life in general? Can you tell us a little bit more about that before we dive into those 7?
No, I would love to. Thank you for asking that question.
Yes.
It's a diversity of people who felt stuck in some way. It could be career. Okay. It could be in their personal life, romantic disappointments, with their health and well-being, financial, any way. And it was people who felt chronically stuck. It wasn't the everyday kind of stuck that we all face. Maybe you had an important job interview and you got caught in crazy traffic and you missed it, or you forgot to bring snacks to your kid's classroom. And I think that was also me making that noise. So let me correct that. So there's so many different ways that people get stuck. And I talked to people. Most of the people were in North America, but really it was people from around the world, ages 20 to 70, most people 30s, 40s, and 50s, who were conscious about being stuck. So does that answer your question?
That's super perfect. Yeah, super helpful. Thank you for clarifying that.
Great. So the first thing that I found, the first pattern, is something that I call you don't do you. And that is really about being unwilling to show your true self, being inauthentic. And do you want me to elaborate elaborate or just kind of list the 7? You tell me.
It's already, no, I mean, that resonates already so much. Yes. I would love for you to talk a little bit. Well, yeah, let's go through the list and then we'll maybe talk about one or two in more detail.
Sure. The second is something I call you're on a road to nowhere. And that is when you're unsure about your purpose or your motivation, because that's so prevalent. People, we're always taught we're supposed to have a purpose. A lot of people don't know what their purpose is. And that can cause some anxiety.
Yeah. And I think 1 and 2 can actually be interconnected as well, right? Because you can't be maybe very authentic because you don't really know what your purpose is.
Absolutely. If you don't know what your purpose is or who you are, you just kind of go with the flow of everybody who you're with, trying to impress them or fit in, and it's not really you. The third thing is you don't consider forgiveness. And it's not just forgiving other people. Most important, it's not forgiving yourself. Oh, you are nodding your head. Yes, you know what I'm talking about. Yep.
Yes. Yep. 100%. And also because forgiveness is something that I teach in my 10-week program. Because people underestimate the power of forgiveness and how important it is to move past certain things in our lives. So yeah, forgiveness is a great topic. I love that you have that as a reason.
And I love that you're passionate about it and an expert in helping people get unstuck with it. That's great. So the fourth is you don't trust yourself. And that's when you lack self-confidence and you don't trust your own decisions. The fifth pattern is something I call you're a Debbie Downer. And if you've ever seen Saturday Night Live, there used to be a skit by Rachel Dratch. It was a woman who, she would go to like weddings, events, and just talk about all the negative things going on in the world. And it's really people who, when given the choice, will choose pessimism over optimism. The next pattern is you're not flexible, and that's an inability or you're just not willing to pivot when you need to in life. And the final one is something I call you're shipwrecked. And that is when you're isolated, you don't have a trusted community, or you're not accepting help or support.
Yeah. Wow. They're all amazing. That's a great summary of the 7 things that get us stuck. Amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very interesting. Okay. So, listeners are listening to this right now and they identify 1 or 2 or 3 of these areas. So what is the next step that they can take once they have identified it? And I assume already that awareness of maybe being honest with yourself about what is actually the thing that is keeping you in a certain pattern is probably almost the most powerful thing you can do, right?
You have to be honest. You have to be open. And by the way, I have a quiz on my website that can help you figure out how you're stuck. So perfect. You can take it, like you said, number of people are, in multiple ways they're going to be stuck. But yeah, you have to be open to it. And by the time I think you get to this process, you realize something's not right. Because stuckness is when you're not living in alignment with the life that you want to lead. So you've got to be open. And then once you see those patterns and figure out where you fall, it's really important to take a pause and get clear about yourself and your values and who you are and what you would like your desired state of being to be. And by that, it could be, I want to have joy in my life every day, or the absence of struggle. So it's setting a general direction in that way, and then starting to work on finding your purpose or reconnecting with it if you feel like you've lost your way.
It makes me very curious talking about all of this to go back actually to your own personal life and to talk about because you said you're kind of a master at being stuck and then getting unstuck. Can you tell us maybe 1 or 2 episodes of your own life that maybe really showcase this really well?
Yes. So I mentioned before that it all started about 30 years ago. I was obese for most of my life, and then I worked on loving myself, treating myself like a friend. And as an outcome of that, got healthy. So that was the first time I got unstuck. But over the years, I was able to overcome a major business failure during the Great Recession and thrive. And now I'm more successful than I've ever been. I found lasting love after divorce. I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 2014, and from that moved into remission and a state of constant wellness. and really learned, the shift we started talking about today about, corporate career. I've got a very fulfilling career, but I wanted to have a purpose-driven life. And it's bringing it all together in a way that, generates as much meaning and fulfillment as possible.
I love as well, it really resonates with me that you're doing both of these things, because I think it's not very common, actually, honestly, that I see like the corporate person and the coach and the business owner in general. It doesn't have to be just coaching, right? Because I think maybe a narrative that we sometimes tell ourselves is it has to be one or the other. It can't be both at the same time, And as I'm obviously going through this exploratory work and through all of these different podcast episodes, and I get like really interesting podcast guests, I see this happening a little more often, not very often, but it's starting to resonate with me. And I do want to just highlight that also for the listener, because if you are currently thinking about what is next in my career, and maybe you have that passion and that itch to try out something for yourself, it doesn't have to be just that. You can do two things at the same time. And you're obviously a wonderful example of being able to juggle all of these different hours together. And I'm actually curious to hear more about that as well. And I'm sure the listener is too, in terms of like, how do you manage your day? So, are you because you have a 40-hour work week, so you have 8 hours a day of work. So how do you do executive coaching, and when do you write books and when do you spend time with your partner? Like, how do you fit it all in?
It's a matter, I'm going to say, you've got to start by having self-compassion and recognizing you can't do everything at once. So it's really about a healthy blend. Okay. And what I mean by that is, 4 years ago, I'm like, okay, I'll write a book. It'll take me 8 months. Crazy lie, I told myself. It took me years because I was doing so many things. I don't have the time to do individual coaching for people. That's one of the reasons why I did the book. I did have a coaching practice when I was going through my certification, and I focus a lot on speaking. So those particular things allow me to help people, but I don't have the time for that kind of practice as I have a corporate job right now. It's a matter of, I start each day by making a priority list of what do I need to get done. And I realize, even if I have like a crazy amount of things on that list, realistically, I can do 4 or 5 of them well. So what's important, and breaking things down into manageable steps. And going back to the example of writing a book, I really did get stuck at first in writing the book because I just felt it was really overwhelming. I just was like, okay, I'm going to conduct research. I'll turn the research into some articles. I like writing. I'm seeing all of these different patterns. And then it took shape and form. I wrote the book several times. I had to have self-compassion, realize, okay, that one's not going to work. When I found the right publisher, I had to do a major rewrite. I just tried to carve the right time out of the day. And at some point, you're going to have to make decisions with your time. I have a wonderful husband. He's a busy executive too. He was an Iron Man for many years. He's not quite on that schedule anymore, but we don't have children. And so that does create a little bit more time in my schedule. And when I was going through the book rewrite and trying to balance that with my corporate job, I had to really dial back social engagements. I had to firmly say no to so many things so I could say yes to myself. I've turned down being on different boards, going on trips, things that, are interesting, but I just had to focus, prioritize, have compassion, and then juggle it every day.
Yeah. And I think it also shows so beautifully that even if you take really small steps, you can still get to the end result, right? Because even if it took you 4 years to write this book, you're still publishing this book now, or you have already published the book, right?
It came out in May, and I'm thrilled with it.
Amazing. So yeah, congratulations, by the way. That's a great achievement, and something that I have on my list of things to do and things to want to do as well. But it's very inspiring to see and hear all of these different stories, because I've talked to book authors that wrote a book in 3 months, and I've talked to people that wrote a book in 10 years. And so it's really, there's no right or wrong of how long it takes, as long as you're chipping away at it. All right, great. So thank you so much for all of these different insights that you're sharing. It just brings for me together, kind of a little bit more of a picture of who you are and what your life is about and how you structure it. Have you experienced burnout through these periods of time?
I did. Some of the hardest times that I've had during COVID, during the pandemic, it was easy for me to learn how to work from home. I mean, I was one of those people. I like being in the office. I'm an extrovert. I enjoy the energy of others. So learning how to work from home full time for a few months was hard. And I also, one of the things I do in my corporate job is crisis communications. So I did nothing with my book for about 4 or 5 months in there when the pandemic struck and, we had to do so much that was focused on the business. I also experienced burnout when I had to do the massive book rewrite last year. It was due in December, so I could publish in May. At the same time, very busy with my corporate work. And it was hard, but I knew it. I could recognize the signs of burnout. I knew, the thrill was gone. It was just hard to do anything beyond the basics. And I tried to focus at that time on spending more time being versus doing. I just had to go really quiet and take some time off to do nothing. And that helped me a lot, rather than have my husband and I, love to travel, and we're glad to be able to start traveling again. But rather than go and explore city and have all these adventures, it was like, I just need quiet. I need to, I need to take Pilates. I need to get some sleep. I need to just really focus on eating healthy, just the basics. I never stopped exercising, and journaling helped me keep going. But during those times of burnout, again, being kind to yourself and slowing down to see what's going on, and then consciously coming back in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good reminder, because we can get out of balance sometimes, but we need to know the right tools and follow these routines and habits. I sometimes fall out of it too. It's not necessarily that I immediately burn out because of that, but I definitely, at the moment, full transparency, I'm kind of not in the best workout routine, and I love to work out. I'm a very active person. But yeah, I've just I'm thinking about it every day, and I'm like, I know I want to get back into it, but I haven't, I feel like sometimes it's just sitting with the thought for me for a few weeks until I actually kind of create a plan and I start doing it again. And I know, and I have had many times in my life where I would work out in the morning very regularly every morning, and it would give me incredible amounts of energy. And I'm, and I love to work out in the morning. I love to work out in the evening. I don't really, I don't mind I do everything. I like to do everything, but yeah, at the moment it's not there. And, and I accept that as well. And I'm like, I know it will come back. I am a very active person, and I know I love it. But yeah, sometimes it's just to be okay with the present situation as well, and not beat yourself up because you don't do it. The other thing that really resonated with me, and also because it's a little bit is a part of my own kind of family history and story, is the Crohn's disease. My sister has Crohn's since she's 18 years old, so 20 years. And, I think Crohn's and all of these different autoimmune diseases are oftentimes related to obviously high levels of stress, either emotional stress or, maybe external factors that are influencing and impacting that as well. How are you managing that?
I am managing it well. It's a combination of things, but I'll tell you what, the business failure that I had in 2009, I had to fire great employees. I had a lot of debt I had to pay off. I kept everything going on my own for 4 years. And that's what caused the Crohn's disease. It was when I finally had everything in a great place again, and could breathe. My body just went, okay, we're done. I've managed it. I've gotten some good medical care, but I know that getting enough sleep, the exercise, which has been important to me for 30 years, has been critical. Watching when I eat, there's certain things that just aren't great for me. Sugar is my frenemy. I am so much happier and healthier when I try not to eat processed sugar, and that definitely affects Crohn's. So even though I've been in remission, I was diagnosed with it in 2014, and I've been in remission since 2016. Those factors need to be in place, and my body tells me when I'm not paying attention to them.
Yeah, amazing. Okay. All the things that I wanted to address. All right, so let's go back to the book. Okay, so the first step, obviously, when you're feeling like you're being stuck, is to maybe dive a second layer down, right? And to really identify what is it actually, what are the reasons why I'm being stuck right now. And you mentioned these really amazing 7 different reasons why we could potentially get stuck. And you also mentioned that on your website you have a quiz. Where can people find that exactly?
You can go to Shira, Shira Miller.com, and the quiz is there. It's free. I've got a whole bunch of articles on it, and you can find out how you are stuck and what to do about it.
Okay, great. So obviously we are listening to you right now. So we do want to get a couple of different tools from you right now to dive into that deeper. So so once we have identified that specific reason, what can we do next in order to get unstuck?
So some of it is proving, okay, I'll go through parts of the process. So after you've identified what your purpose is, and I've got tools to help you find all of that, then you start the process of forgiveness, something you are an expert in, and building your confidence. I have a tool that I've created called a reverse bucket list. And a bucket list is a list of items you want to do before you kick the bucket, before you die one day. In this case, I ask people to write down everything they've already done. And it might be, I went to college, or I lost weight. I'm in a great relationship. I created my own business. And I encourage people to list as many things as possible. The longer, the better, because what you do when you actually step away and then go back and look at that list, it serves as your evidence that you have done all of these things. You can absolutely get unstuck in this area, and it really helps you build your confidence. Another thing you can do, and I've got this as a downloadable tool, is you give yourself permission to actively fill out a permission slip that you are ready to change. And you start to learn how to choose optimism over pessimism. And there's an exercise called cognitive reframing, where you look at a situation. You're nodding, you know what I'm talking about, but
it's good that you're explaining it again.
So you are giving yourself permission to look at something in a different way. And I'll give you a corporate example. Let's say that you're working in a job and you're not crazy about it, or the culture doesn't feel right, and there's a layoff and you lose your job. Okay. You look at it and you're like, wow, that's awful. I've lost my job. But then you can also take the perspective that you choose. I wasn't happy there anyway. This is a great opportunity right now to start looking for something that brings me more happiness, that I enjoy more. So it's the kick in the butt I needed to start doing something different. So you can look at all sorts of situations. Going back to my Crohn's example, that was awful at the time, but did it encourage me to have a completely different, better life? Yes. I thank the business failure. I thank the Crohn's. I thank the divorce I had in the past, because now I have such a wonderful husband. All of those things that were hard, and looking at it differently, allowed me to see I could have better and ultimately have more fulfillment.
Yeah, totally. And you're mentioning obviously all of the different tools you can do for the different reasons. Now, when I go through this quiz on your website, or I'm listening and I'm already like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 things that I feel like they really resonate with me. How do you approach it? Do you say it's better to focus on one thing first and just kind of resolve that, take your time working on that, and then move to the next one? Or it's always, because I think obviously life is not black and white. There's always these gray areas, and there's different reasons that kind of keep us maybe in a stuck world. What would you recommend people to do?
I recommend you pick one thing, the thing that feels like it's the thing you most want to get rid of, you most want to resolve. Pick one thing at a time. You can go back through the process, and that really makes it more effective. The biggest thing, not the biggest thing, depending on who you are, it could be overwhelming when you're trying to make big change. And some people say, I'm going to go big or I'm going to go home. I don't believe that. I don't advocate that. I believe that you can take measured steps, and the progress that you make over time will get you not only where you want to be, but far ahead. You can exceed your goals in that way. So when you figure out how you're stuck, if it's in multiple areas, start with the first thing and then you'll go back later to the next. Like the process I've got in my book, I've used so many of these tools over the years and I've used them to help people. Right now, I'm actually going through my own process to learn how to break up with processed sugar. And I something last year to get extra energy when I was working on the book and doing everything. And I knew I really had to watch everything. I did that very successfully, felt amazing. A couple of things triggered it coming back. So now I'm just going through, I'm drinking my own Kool-Aid. I'm going through my own advice and it's working beautifully.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I mean, I know that people would always like to know the duration. So I am going to ask that question because I'm curious to hear what you're going to say about it. But like, what is the pros? Like, how long does it take, right, to get unstuck?
It depends how stuck you are, how deep the roots are in it. Some people, you can decide, you can have an aha moment and go, I am done with this, do a couple of exercises. And it in certain instances, it could be days or weeks. But if you've got something that you've really been chronically stuck on, it can take months because you've got to practice it. You've got to work on it. You can get there to a certain extent, but you've got to reinforce it. And the rule of thumb in research is that it can, the variance of how long it can take to change a habit. It could be, some people say 21 days. The research has actually shown the average is 66 days. Some people, it's over 200 days. So it really depends on the individual. Same is true in getting unstuck, but you've got to practice things on a longer term basis to make it stick.
Yeah. And I think it's also always the question of how disciplined are you as a person, right? Or how consistent can you be? What are your life circumstances like without using it as an excuse to not change, but to maybe look at it at how much can you give? What is the minimum thing, the smallest thing that you can give right now, right? Because again, I'm going to use my sister as an example, who is a great example to me and has always been. She's my bigger sister. She's 2 years older than me, and she was never a very active person. And because of, all of the health challenges she's been having and trying out a million different things and not trying out anything and just kind of sitting with the disease and, taking a very strong medication, she's been getting into a really powerful workout routine over the last year. And I'm just like, I'm so impressed with her because I think it's so beautiful to see that, even her as a person that always said, I'm not a morning person, I'm not a workout person. Like, I don't really like sports, like probably the biggest thing she ever did was like going for walks. She started to get into yoga and doing like yoga 5 to 10 minutes every morning because she's also a single mom of a little girl of 6 years old. And so, she started to do these like 5 to 10 minute yoga sessions because it felt good on her, intestines and like stretching it out and so on and so on. And then during the pandemic, she started to do these like 10, 15 minute YouTube workout videos on like strengthening the core or like doing like, any type of exercises. And she's so consistent about it. And it's so impressive for me to see how she really took these really, really mini steps to get into that habit of doing something. And now she's kind of stacking habits on one on the other in order to kind of introduce something new. And so, if you're listening right now and you think, that really resonates with me because I find it really difficult to start something. It really, even if it's just 1 minute in the morning, it doesn't have to be anything big, because I think oftentimes we think, oh, it has to be this huge change, right? It has to be this huge decision or huge action that I need to take in order to get out of it. But what is just maybe the smallest thing you can do today in order to move towards that goal? I think is a good question to ask yourself.
I love how you just explained that. That's so true. And just that 1 minute makes all the difference. You build from it.
Yeah, exactly. I read a really interesting book at the beginning of the year, and it's super popular. I'm sure you know it. It's Atomic Habits from James Clear.
I love that book.
And it's so interesting because, I was reading the book, and he's obviously done so much research, but it is a very simply written book, which I love, because I think self-help books can be very heavy and like just so full of research that I might lose interest. But I think it's so nicely structured, and they're like over and over and over again. And I've read this book in January. I like these little things come back that's resonated so deeply with me, and that helped me so much to stay in habits, like the visual cues. Like I know now if there's something that I don't want to forget, I put it somewhere where I can see it before I put it away, because I like to put things away to make it all look neat, but then I forget about things that I want to do. So yeah, it's really all about the process and sticking through the process. And so I'm curious actually to hear as well about your group coaching, because you did say you're not doing one-on-one coaching, you do a lot of speaking engagements, and then also group coaching. What do you focus on with your clients?
Well, I'm actually looking at creating some webinars that would take people through my free and clear process. So I don't currently have group coaching.
I see.
But it will be probably by the beginning of 2023.
Okay. It's something that you're working on right now.
Yes.
Exciting. Yes. Very nice. Shira, is there anything else in this process of getting unstuck that we haven't maybe touched upon yet? So obviously we are identifying the reason of why we're being stuck, and then we're taking a clear path of next step of how to work towards that. Is there anything else that we haven't addressed yet?
I want people to realize that we're all human. We're not perfect, and you can feel like you're unstuck, but it's important to take internal assessments, see how you're doing, be kind to yourself, and then recommit to getting back on track. The important thing is, if you're not on the right trajectory, realize it, and then the moment you realize it, start making the changes to get back to where you are. Forgive yourself. Don't beat yourself up. That's going to make it worse. So I think that's important. Also, people can get unstuck at any age. I have talked to people who have completely redone their lives in their 60s. It's never too late. You might have, let's say that you've spent all these years raising a family and you've had a successful career, but you're like, when is it going to finally be time for yourself? Or you might be at the beginning of your career and new to adulting and feeling kind of stuck with, how do I create this life? I don't know what I'm going to be doing these days. It's never too late. It's never too early to get started as well.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that with us today. It was a pleasure to have you, Shira. So thank you already for your time and energy to share all of your knowledge with us and with all of the listeners, of course, today. And if you as a listener have been listening to this and you think about a person that maybe you identified is kind of stuck at the moment, please make sure to share this podcast episode with them, because it's always nice to help people that way. I think sometimes hearing other people's stories is so much more powerful than just, maybe having a one-on-one with your family member, your sister or your mom or your partner. Sometimes it comes across differently when you share a different voice and story. So make sure that you do that. And I would always love to hear from you. So please don't forget that it's also always really welcome to leave a 5-star review on iTunes, to rate this podcast that I know you've been listening so well to over the last few years. Thank you so much for listening today. Thank you so much again for Shira for being here with us. And I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.